Linked up on Mark13News.com for February 26, 2022 is first of all Russia vetoes UN Security Council resolution that would have demanded Moscow immediately stop its attack on Ukraine and withdraw all its troops. The United Nations being, in my opinion, the great horn of the he-goat of Daniel chapter 8 that must first be broken, so to speak, before the so-called New World Order can emerge at the woe of the fifth trumpet. Up next, a Western plot to impose a unipolar world order as opposed to a multipolar world order, and within that you can see the two warring factions of Kenites called the robbers of thy people in Daniel 11:14, and they'll continue to exalt themselves to establish the vision of a world government, but they shall fail, because there will be no new world order as it's called until Satan and his angels get cast to earth at the woe of the fifth trumpet. And finally, military situation in eastern Ukraine, which is a map update on southfront.org. And linked up for February 27th is first of all the key issue for Russia, which is an article titled Ukraine Should Have a Policy of Non-Involvement with NATO, opines Zbigniew Brzezinski, who wrote on the last page of his book The Grand Chessboard in 1997 that the existing UN structures would eventually need to be upgraded by the United States along with key Eurasian partners. A new world order, in other words, but again, the global government written of in Revelation 13 won't come into being until the beginning of the 5-month-long hour of temptation. Up next, war in Ukraine paves way for multipolar world, which is obviously more anti-unipolar propaganda, and finally the United Nations not fit for purpose, which again is the great horn of the he-goat of Daniel chapter 8, in my opinion, as well as the one who sends a raiser of taxes in Daniel 11:20 when you properly translate the verse, as you can see pointed out in the Daniel 11 hypothesis on biblicalresearchlabs.com. Linked up for February 28th is Ukraine applies for EU membership, followed by Armenia stands alone in support for Russia in the Council of Europe, that is to say, Armenia being most likely to Gorma in Ezekiel 38, and finally the United Nations may collapse like the League of Nations, and it's also pointed out in the Daniel 11 hypothesis that Daniel 11 verses 16 through 19 cover the League of Nations, with verse 20 being the United Nations, the one who sends a raiser of taxes, which is, in my opinion, the Paris Climate Accord, which was agreed to at the 2015 United Nations Climate Change Conference. So you see the United Nations being destroyed, which is the same word in the Hebrew as broken, in Daniel chapter 8 verse 8, then beginning in Daniel 11:21 is the so-called New World Order when Satan and his angels get cast to earth. Remember, it's written in Revelation 13 that the dragon, who is Satan, gives the first beast, which is the one world political system, his power and his seat and great authority, Satan not appearing as the Antichrist until Daniel 11:31. Linked up for March 1st, 2022 is first of all European Union welcomes Ukrainian bid, followed by Moscow threatens high-precision strikes, and finally U.S. provoked Russian invasion to maintain primacy. And linked up for March 2nd is first of all Russia still part of Iran nuclear talks, Iran being Persia in Ezekiel 38, followed by Turkey, which is most likely Gomer, to support all paths to peace in Ethiopia, and finally Libyan lawmakers approve new government. These all being countries that are part of the Ezekiel 38 confederacy that will become the bear of Daniel chapter 7 at the woe of the fifth trumpet. Linked up for March 3rd is first of all Russian invasion has strengthened Pax Americana, followed by the world remains unipolar in economic terms, and finally World Bank halts all programs in Russia and Belarus. So the multipolarist propaganda we constantly see claiming the world is already multipolar stems from the Kenites on that end of the globalist spectrum trying to talk the multipolar world order into existence. But again, there will be no one world government until the woe of the fifth trumpet. And finally, linked up for March 4th, 2022, as battle is being waged for the future of the world, Russian invasion, part of Putin's Edom's great game and a challenge to U.S. hegemony, but it's more of an invasion by stealth psychologically being carried out by Edom, which means red, that's written of in Daniel 11:15. Ammon and Moab being symbolic of the left-right paradigm infiltrated by the Stalinists and the Trotskyites, controlled by the Kenites on the unipolar end of the globalist spectrum. Nation shall rise against nation, meaning the shadow government of the Kenite nation, which is symbolized by the he-goat of Daniel chapter 8, rising up against itself up until the great horn of the he-goat gets broken, so to speak, which is the same word in the Hebrew as destroyed in Daniel 11:20, after which the so-called New World Order comes into being at the woe of the fifth trumpet, which then gets wounded to death, after which Satan appears as the Antichrist at the woe of the sixth trumpet, as you can also see in Daniel 11:31, beginning the 2.5 months or 70 evenings the 70 years in captivity to the Babylon of old were a type of. The true Christ won't return at all until the woe of the seventh trumpet, and as the true Christ says in the last verse of Mark chapter 13, what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch.